And you know what the number one reason people stay in their career?
Security.
People say security because they love their job, money. It's because they're good at what they do.
Better get ready, because here comes another great episode of the No Dishes Podcast. Season 6 is brought to you by Visit Bloomington. Check them out at visitbloomington.com. Play that theme song.
Hey, say, honey, let's go out to eat. Relieve our culinary duties. With all these restaurants to sweep us off our feet, they're bound to turn us into foodies. No dishes, no dishes, no dishes. We'll have a bottle of wine, relax and have a good time. No dishes, no dishes.
Nestled on the north side at the Cascades Inn is Sleeper's Bar, and we've got Michael Sleeper Cheatham here with us. Michael, how we doing, man?
Fantastic. Thanks for having me here.
Yeah, I'm so pumped. Well, so I had heard for a while about Sleepers. I'd never been over there. My buddies and I got done playing cards, and I don't drink, but they were like, let's grab a drink. I was like, guys, right nearby is this place I wanted to go check out. We got lucky that your bartender had something going on. Yeah. So we go in, you stayed open late for us, and we just so happened we get the namesake behind the bar. And you were I had such a fun time chatting with you. I was like, I need to get this guy on. And here we are, 3 or 4 days later?
Yeah.
We wasted zero time.
Yeah, I like that.
So what is Sleeper's Bar? What can people expect if they come there?
Well, the idea was to have a local place a place where locals could go that was laid back, quiet, accessible, not really crowded, easy place to park, and not a lot of college, not the college scene. So I was really looking to attract people that are right in my neighborhood.
Yeah, it seems like you've already been succeeding. I know you said you have a lot of people, like teachers from North, and there's something, I like how that's probably the biggest selling point. You're like, not the college crowd.
Exactly. Yes. And it's quaint. It's kind of like, not by intent, but it's kind of like Cheers.
Yeah.
On a smaller scale.
Absolutely. And I mean, I've said a million times on here, my favorite spot's always been Alley Bar because it has that kind of small feel. You walk in, hey, how's it going? And that has that same vibe. I mean, we were the only ones in there, we came in so late, but I could just tell the aesthetic, just how you welcomed us with the Jello shot syringes. I did not partake, but it was funny. Yeah.
The booster.
Yeah. Gotta stay boosted.
Yes, absolutely.
Well, I was shocked. You guys have so much going on as far as open mics, live music. Because again, I've known that you were there, but I didn't know that you had a full blown event calendar.
Yeah, we just started probably in the last 2 months, really starting to fill it in. We started out with just one band or one group, a duo, a brother and sister act. This played in our courtyard last summer for 4 Wednesdays. And we saw such an increase in sales just in the middle of the week that we had never seen before. We thought we'd bring it back inside, and we started doing that after the first of the year. And now people are calling us, asking if they can come play.
I love that. Yeah, it's right. You're like, oh, weird. Maybe there's something to this.
Yeah,
let's keep this rolling. I think you did say you would never do karaoke. Is that right?
Well, never say never, right?
Yeah.
I personally will never do karaoke.
Okay, yeah. All right.
I don't want to make people look bad. But it's just not the vibe. And people ask all the time, but then there are other people say, don't bring karaoke in here. So yeah, I'm not gonna never say never, but it could happen. But I just don't know when and where.
You can't please everybody.
You can't.
Well, it only came up because you had great music going.
Yeah.
You had Chicago Saturdays in the park. My dad was
on
a big
Saturday.
I know, Saturday. Barely. We still had about 30 minutes.
Yeah.
And I'm just belting it. And of course we're like, and my buddy Josh does trivia. I actually do bingo. I don't think we told you this.
No.
We do like bar entertainment.
Oh, really?
That's what I leave for tonight is to go call bingo at a bar. And then he does trivia. He does it like 7 times a week at different places. Yeah.
I could talk about that. That's
yeah. No, the whole reason I invited you here was to sell you on my services. But what I found so fascinating when we were talking is this is kind of almost like a retirement gig for you.
Yeah.
And you've had a crazy, very successful career. Can you kind of talk about your background and what led you here to Sleepers?
Okay.
Yeah, where to start?
Yeah. Well, I was born, anyway. I came to school here at Indiana. I'm from Indianapolis originally. and to go to med school. And I pretty quickly, and I realized that's not what I wanted to do. So I changed my major a bunch of times, ended up with a degree in speech communications. And with that, landed my first job in retail, which I was going to have for 1 year over in Cincinnati before I came back for grad school. Well, I hated that job more than life itself. I mean, it just I couldn't hate anything more. And so a friend of mine called me that I went to school with and said they're looking for people in sales, hospitality sales, in a hotel out in Washington D.C. area. So I said, okay, I'll check it out. And lo and behold, I found my love, my passion, and that was sales. So it wasn't like working at the front desk; it was working behind the scenes, booking group events. Well, quickly I got promoted from D.C. to Denver, then back to the D.C. area, Northern Virginia, Maryland, and then down to Miami, Philadelphia, Chicago, New Orleans, Albuquerque, Chicago, back to Cincinnati, where I left the industry and started my job as a professional speaker and trainer and a consultant. Well, my buddy ended up buying the Cascades Inn, and he was looking. I was talking to him. He said, "Come check out the place." And I said, "Oh, well, okay." Came out and checked it out. And I was like, it was like early on when he was starting to rehab it. And I was doing some consulting work with him, doing training on the front desk. And he said he was looking for somebody to open the bar. And at that point, somebody had once asked me, "Would you ever move back to Indiana?" I said, "No way. There's no way on God's green earth I'll ever live in Indiana again, unless," there's always an unless, "I can move to Bloomington and open a bar. That's the only place I'll live in Bloomington." So when the opportunity arose, I had to take it. And it was a perfect opportunity, perfect timing, and that's what got me back here in this gig.
I love that. I've always said I grew up in Carmel. I lived in Broad Ripple for a year. And I've always said I feel like I'm living in the best place that you could live in Indiana.
I agree 100%.
Perfect size, not too big, not too small. You have all these things because of the university, all the amazing food scene.
Yeah.
Obviously, that's why we're even here in the first place.
Yeah. And I tell people, I said, you know what? It's like living in I compare it to Chicago. Living in Chicago with all the things I could do in Chicago, but being able to do it in a very small, concise way. And when it comes to the food scene, there's no place I've gone yet that I did not like.
Wow.
None.
Do you have a favorite that you've had since you've been back?
I don't know if I can call any one a favorite, but there's the Uptown Cafe, Malibu. Yeah. Those are all just no-brainers. And then Trojan Horse is my go-to.
Oh, all right.
And that's just a casual place. But then, I could go on.
We'll circle back to it too. Yeah. Cause
right.
We'll dive into all of that, but I was like, I have to know. So you're going to make a statement like that.
Yeah.
I haven't had anything bad yet. Well,
yeah.
And talk about being able to do all the things in Chicago, but you can do them here, but like tighter, more concise. The three places you mentioned are within 100 feet of each other.
Yeah, right. Yeah, you can't throw a rock without hitting a good place to eat.
Yeah,
seriously.
But like you got Uptown, Troho, Malibu, all just right there.
Right there, yeah.
Yeah. So you were with Hyatt, right?
I was with Marriott and Hyatt.
Okay.
Marriott first, then Hyatt.
Yeah, because you were listing off all these places that you've lived. And that was part of why you're like, man, I've been to all these places. Why would I go back to Indiana? Miami, New Orleans, Albuquerque. Yeah, all of them. It's nuts. You're so well traveled. What was your favorite of those that you kind of went to and lived in and worked in?
I was growing up. I was coming into my own. Yeah. So when I moved into D.C., it was fantastic because there was a young group of us that all hung out together. And we played hard, but we worked hard. But the food scene in D.C. made it so much more a bigger experience for me because there was things I'd never experienced before. Then I moved to Denver. And anyone who's been to Denver, there's very few that hated it. I loved it. And then Miami was a totally different vibe altogether as well.
I would imagine, yeah.
I love visiting there, but I'm not sure I could ever live there again.
Right.
And then let's go back to food again. New Orleans. Have you been there?
I haven't. It's dude, top of my list.
Dude, I have a really difficult time gaining weight and keeping it on, except for when I lived in New Orleans.
Huh. Yeah, just vignettes all the time?
No. I had a couple.
Yeah, one or two.
Yeah.
Yeah, we had, did you ever have the chance to go to Small Favors before it closed?
No.
So Nick Dietrich, who was the owner there, he has a place and has opened multiple places down in New Orleans, and just him talking about the food scene down there. And he asked the same thing. Have you ever been? I'm like, no, I haven't. I'm working on it. I'm trying. I want to go so bad because I love the Creole style food and just everything that New Orleans is kind of all about.
Yeah.
You know?
You can't go wrong.
So how long were you in the hotel gig before you got into the keynote speaking?
Well, I started when I was 15. So my first gig, it was Roadway Inn. And then I was in it for 3 decades, 30 years.
Wow.
Yeah.
Man.
And then I even when I became a professional speaker and trainer, a lot of my clients were still in the hospitality industry. So I still had that connection.
Yeah. What what did your job entail? Just going to like, oh, I'm going to this city, I'm fixing this one specific hotel?
Oh, no, it was all in convention or group sales.
Okay.
So I was tasked with bringing groups into our hotels for what we call rates, dates, and space. So they were going to come in, they were going to get a specific rate over these dates for the amount of space they needed. So, for example, if a group wanted to bring in their sales, like the medical field, they were going to roll out a new drug. They bring all their salespeople into one location. They'd house them and they train them on this new drug, and then and other things bring them up to date, and they would go out and sell this drug, right?
Yeah.
So we would house these people, these conventions or these group meetings in our hotel. And then as I moved up, I became more involved with bigger conventions, bringing conventions to cities and housing them in our hotel along with other hotels as well. And finally, my last job was the best job I've ever had in my life. I was in Chicago at the corporate headquarters for Hyatt, and I was the Director of Sales Recruitment for North America for Hyatt Hotels.
Wow.
So my responsibility was the recruitment of salespeople for all of our properties in North America. And then that included overall satisfaction, staffing, recruitment, training. And God, I loved that job. I loved it. And it came to a point where I had to make a decision to walk away from the best job I ever had, to start my own business. And I said, I don't want to look back one day and say, woulda, coulda, shoulda.
Right, yeah.
The timing was right. I had some money stashed away. I could walk away and start ground zero, making no money. Well, I had a couple things lined up before I did that, but then I did that and I loved it. I loved it. I miss it dearly, but at the same time, had I not done what I did when I did it,
right,
I would not be sitting here with you now and doing something else I had a passion for doing for a long time.
Yeah, well, and that's great. You're going to be able to look back and not have any regrets. You took the risk there. Now you're getting to do a bar. Mm-hmm. Yeah. How long were you in that role in Chicago?
7 years, maybe.
Okay.
Yeah.
So, I mean, essentially you're a talent scout in that position, right?
Talent scout I wore a lot of hats.
Okay.
I wore a lot of hats, but the main responsibility was finding talent.
And you're just like, where's the young me? Is that what you're kind of
I don't know about that, man.
Okay.
But it was just like, but it was not just entry level. I had entry level all up to I recruited and hired people for our trainee program. So to give you an example, my first year in the job, the person prior had hired 14 people for over 120 properties. In the next year, by the end of my first year, I had hired 125, 130 people because we had a gap, a shortfall of having talent moved up. So that was my first step. But then I would also go out and I'd interview and recruit senior level people, for positions. I didn't hire them. The properties themselves were required for bringing those people into the once I surfaced them.
Yeah.
Right. And I'd team up. I mean, it was a great job because I get to know you and I knew who you were and I knew you were happy where you were, but that was me building a relationship with you and letting you know that, here's some opportunities that I thought about you for. I'm good where I am. Okay, that's fine. But I kept talking. I kept that relationship going. Eventually you'd call me and say, hey, listen, I've got this guy that would be perfect for you. So you became a recruiter for me as well.
Interesting. Yes.
And then one day I might call you and you weren't happy. It might be the day I hooked you and brought you over.
Yeah.
Right to the dark side.
Of corporate hotels.
Yes, exactly.
Well, no, I mean, I've always said it's all about who you know and the relationships you have. And there might not be a need or any way that you can help each other at any given point in time, but just wait. Mm-hmm. It's always going to happen.
Yeah.
At some point.
Yeah. One of my favorite stories, I was gone 27 of 29 days in the month of February one year traveling. And I was so over it. Airports, planes. And so I said, I need a break. I need to get away, right? So what do? I book a trip to Australia. So I go from hating airplanes to getting on one for how many hours? But during the trip, I take I'm in Sydney and I'm on the Sydney Harbor Bridge climb. where you actually go over a operational bridge, right? And you're harnessed in, and they take all your personal belongings off of you, so nothing will fall off and hit a car driving underneath you. And I'm talking to this girl who's behind me online, and I asked, hey, where are you from? She's from, wherever she was from, San Francisco or something like that. And I said, well, are you a student? Yeah. Well, what are you going to do when you graduate? She goes, is this an interview?
Yeah. You're like, oh, my God.
I'm sorry. That's what I do for a living.
Yeah,
so
I'm just trying to show an interest. Yeah.
And her first name was Ira. I'll never forget this. And I said, what are you going to do? She goes, I got a job with this retail firm. I said, funny, I used to do that. I said, so here's my card. So in about a year, when you hate your job, I want you to give me a call, and I'll see what I can do to hook you up. Well, 6 months later, she calls me and she goes, oh, Mr. Cheatham, I don't know if you remember me or not, but my name is Ira. I said, your name is Ira. I met you on a bridge. I'm not going to forget who you are. I go, so you hate your job? She goes, yeah, how'd you know?
Yeah, 6 months.
And got her hired, and within the next 3 weeks and into a new job.
So what was it about retail? Because I've always said, because I've been in restaurants since I was 15, and I've always said, like, I could never work retail. But I've talked to people that worked retail. They're like, I could never work in a restaurant.
Right.
It's just different strokes for different folks. But what is it that you hated about retail so much?
Wow. I think it might have been the company I worked for.
Okay.
Yeah. The management. I mean, they just, it was a different generation too. I don't think people manage this way anymore. I also worked for Kroger for a brief minute. And they told me a story about how these divisionals would come in back in the old days when people were still smoking in the store, putting out, fresh produce. and they didn't like display. They just yank it and everything would fall down to the floor. I'm like, what? Well, in retail, it was the same way. They just come in like, they're just yelling at you all the time, like, get us out, blah, 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 blah. And they just treat us like dogs.
Man.
At least the company I worked for. And I hated it. I don't, we were having this conversation at the bar the other night about how Bobby Knight would yell at his players.
Right.
Right. And then during that time frame, people responded.
Yeah.
Right. But times change and people change. I'm not one to be yelled at.
Yeah.
Right. You want something from me, just ask me.
Yeah.
But once you start yelling, I'm done with you.
Yeah.
And that's what I just never liked. I don't like people yelling at me. It's just not right. It's not respectful.
Yeah, I'm the exact same way. I've always made a point too, like even if I send a message out to staff, not to use all caps or exclamations.
Yeah.
Well, I feel like the message gets lost. You're focusing on the fact that you're getting yelled at.
Yeah,
and you're not focusing on what what's trying to be conveyed.
Or the message itself.
Yeah, exactly. This spring, Constellation for Kids presents Alex Gold, Stuck on Repeat, on stage April 26th through May 12th at the Waldron Arts Center. Don't miss this fun-filled classroom adventure where the audience gets to make all the decisions. 11-year-old Alex Gold needs to repeat the 6th grade. Luckily, Alex has surrounded himself with some trusted friends, you, the audience, to help him make the best choices to succeed. Can you guide Alex through this one-of-a-kind classroom comedy? See Alex Gold, Stuck on Repeat, on stage April 26th through May 12th in downtown Bloomington. Find tickets at cconstellation.org. Okay, so fast forward, you have 7 years in Chicago, your favorite job ever. What is it that spurs you on to finally be like, okay, I'm going to leave this security, leave this job I love? Obviously, I know you said you had a couple things lined up, but what was it that finally pushed you to make it happen?
There's a speaker, his name was Walter Bond, and he was the sixth man off the bench when he played college ball, when he played professional ball. And I heard him at a conference speaking. And in that moment, something just resonated with me because he was talking about how he had gotten to where he was. And how he had to, as a sixth man, he always came off the bench. Every year, there was younger players coming in that were younger, stronger, faster. He said every year in the offseason, I had to work my tail off to come back bigger, stronger, and faster to compete with these guys. And I felt that it was something in that message that said, you know what, you could do so much more. You're very content right now. It's very safe. And I said, And then right after that, I heard these two Harvard Business School business psychologists who said there are 3 stages that you go through in your life as it relates to your work. One is your job, which you get working at McDonald's or whatever, and then you move into your career, and that's where most people end. And you know what the number one reason people stay in their career?
Security.
People say security because they love their job, money. It's because they're good at what they do. they're good at what they do. And when you get to that point, and then you have a spouse, or you have a white picket fence, a mortgage, then you are no longer able to make that leap of faith and move into that third stage, which is your vocation or your calling. All my life, a lot of my successes come from being a speaker. My first speaking engagement when I was 4 years old as one of the three kings in the Sunday school play in front of this in huge congregation.
Did you bring frankincense or myrrh?
I don't. I don't even know.
Yeah,
but since then, I kept getting called into doing these speaking things, and I didn't even know that was what I was called, what my vocation or calling was.
Yeah.
What I was meant to do. So when I started doing some more training, and I was in front of audiences in that job, I said, "Hey, I kind of dig this." And I was hiring people from outside and paying them very good to come in and do this training. I said, I can do this. And that's when I said, okay, now's the time, because I don't want to look back one day and say, could have, should have, could have, would have.
Yeah.
Right. And I'm going to make this leap of faith. And I did. And again, it was just something at that moment in time that I said I want to do, and I did it.
I love that you said that the main reason is they're good at what they do. Because I relate, like I was just talking to my nephew. He was like, hey, what video? I was at a Pacers game with him last night. And he was like, what video games are you playing? I'm like, man, like there's all these games like I want to play, but like I'm not good at them, and I hate not being good at something. And I don't have the time to get good at it to then enjoy it.
Mm-hmm.
You know, and so there's just something to be said for like, yeah, if you're good at something, like that feels good.
Yeah.
And you're comfortable, and it takes a lot of time and effort to go and learn something totally new. Mm-hmm. And it's like, why would you mess with that unless you truly have a calling? Well, I've never heard that. I love that.
Yeah. I think a lot of people, they go after what they're supposed to do, or what they think they're supposed to do. And I think there are probably a lot of people out there that are in jobs that they just don't like, but they're comfortable and they're good at what they do, so they stay there.
Yeah.
As opposed to, and when I turned 40, that's when I realized, you know, let me go back for a second. A vocation, typically people equate it to like the ministry or teaching or nursing, something that typically in the past hasn't paid well. So it's seen as, if you're going to go do your vocation or your calling, you have to sacrifice.
Right.
Well, when I turned 40, I realized I can make money doing this. I don't have to sacrifice. It made it easier for me to make that jump. So I made that jump into doing something I love doing, and if you can tell, talking. And
I could tell Saturday night when I first met you. Yeah.
I was so excited you came in, because it was pretty slow up to that point. I hadn't talked to anybody, so vocal diarrhea right there. But yeah, so I think that I would encourage people that if you can go after something, to do it. I mean, I came here to go to med school. I don't know if I said it at first or not, but it's because I was the first kid in my generation to go to college.
Wow.
And the expectations were high, but they were self-imposed. They weren't imposed by anyone else. My mother says, be a garbage collector if you want to be a garbage collector. Just be the best darn garbage collector you can be. If that's what makes you happy and you can provide for your family that way, then do that. No, that wasn't. I did retail and still, same difference. So I think people fall into. I was interviewing this kid once and trying to get him to come work for the company, and I said, well, what made you want to get into accounting? And he says, well, my mom's an accountant, my dad's an accountant, my uncle's an accountant. I'm like, so again, why do you want to be an accountant?
Yeah.
Because everyone else was being an accountant. I'm like, oh my gosh, right? What do you really want to do? So I was coaching a friend of mine's son, counseling him, and his grandfather was a lawyer, his dad was a lawyer, and they wanted him to become a lawyer. I said, what do you like? What do you want to do? And he says, I like music. All right. So let's find a compromise. Why don't you find something within the legal field, if that's what you want to do, that revolves around music, and bring those two things together, and you'll get what you want, and also have, satisfy your dad and your grandpa.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's one thing I've always been happy about, that like, because all three of my older siblings went to college, got their degrees, and I didn't. I was like, I'm just going to go my way, and it's paid off. And I've been like, that's a good feeling to know that you can't just kind of blaze your own path. But now you got me thinking, like, am I in my career stage? What's my calling down the road?
I think I would think, just in the brief time I've known you, that you're pretty close to knowing what you want to do. You found a passion that you have in your life, and you're pursuing it, right? In many different ways.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah. Well, now we just need Garrett and I need to get the van. We're going to start traveling around, and I'm just going to end up stuck in New Orleans once we go there. I'm never leaving.
See, that's a great idea, though.
Yeah. Oh, we've talked about it. But again, he's got a good job. I've got a good job. We have security. We're both good at what we do. We like what we do. So that's tough. Why it takes time. You gotta.
So here's what you do. You sell your house to somebody who might want it. And then take that money and you store it away, right? And then you live modestly. I mean, I tell you what, when I was younger, I lived for things.
Yeah.
Like the new CD player. Okay, let me date myself, right? And the new stereo system and everything, right? And now I don't live for things or possessions. I live for experiences.
Yeah.
And I could pack up everything I own into a U-Haul. If that's what one of my plans was actually to get a van or a mobile home kind of thing that had a shower and a kitchen, and then travel around while I write. I'm working on 2 books I've been working on for a while, but just travel around the country doing my speaking engagements. I work out of my home and then just write these books. But then the bar came along.
Yeah. Hey, again, you have a bar, which is so sick. I feel like, and just as a retirement gig, and it's that perfect size. Obviously, there's going to be stress with it, but it's not so big that you're just not going to be able to enjoy yourself sometimes. And it sounds like you're meeting a lot of interesting people too.
I mean, there hasn't been, I don't think there's been a week this past where at least 1 or 2 people come in and said, I've driven by this place 1,000 times and never came in. So we decided to stop today. And that happens on a weekly basis.
Well, you said it was a year. It had been open a year this past August. So you're almost.
I said August. It was actually October, November and December. November. It was last 2 years.
Okay.
2 months of the year. Yeah.
So coming up on almost a year and a half.
Right.
Because we opened our Brown County chocolate mousse and it was dead.
Yeah.
For like 2 years.
Yeah.
But there's something that just happens when you just stick with it and stay where like people, they're like, hey, it's there. It's been there. Let's go see what it's all about. And hopefully you're at that point right now where it's about to just go like.
Well, it's funny because in November, December of that first year, it was good business because we had a couple home football games and people were staying in a hotel and they would come in. I remember it was Penn State and I think it was Michigan.
Both travel well. Yeah.
And they're great fans for their team. And they came and they had a good time, probably because they won. But
as most.
Yeah. But then January rolled around. And I sat there many nights by myself and no one came in at all.
Wow.
And I questioned, did I make the right move? But I knew that I had faith that it was going to happen. Eventually it was going to happen. And then now it's starting to come on and more people are finding us. And it's great. It's a lot more what I anticipated or hoped for, but it came around pretty quick. So
I told you, I was surprised by the amount of food offerings you have too. You've got chicken, like wings, pizza, chili.
Yep.
Right.
Pretty good. You looked at me. What's your job? But
yes.
I
mean, I had a water in front of me while everyone else is drinking. I got to do something. I'm studying the food menu like the fat kid that I am.
Yeah. Oh.
It's a mentality.
Okay,
I always say that. Yeah, fat kid is not stature or how you look. It's a mentality.
Okay, all right.
It's going to be my new clothing line. I don't know if I've ever talked about it. Fat kid mentality. It's a clothing line.
Yeah,
that's my calling.
Yeah, that could be.
Yeah,
yeah.
I want to still get back to the speaking gig because that really fascinates me. And I had asked you if you knew who Jay Bear was. We had him on here, and he's a keynote speaker. Goes all the way all around the country, the world, speaking for companies for different things having to do with business, customer service. And it's crazy to me how. Because I do this and I do bingo in front of 200 college kids, but there's still something that scares me about public speaking, and I'll get nervous. Do you? Because when Jay was asked, he's just like, nope, never phases me. Is that something you had to get comfortable with, or you said since you were 4 years old, you've just been a natural speaker?
Yeah, you know what? You put 10 people in front of me, and I'm going to get a little bit nervous. You give me 1,000 people, it's no big deal. I think it's because I can get lost with 1,000 people, or I can say something stupid or corny, and somebody's going to groan, and I know they're listening. Yeah, there's forgiveness in a crowd. With 10 people, no forgiveness. I mean,
Yeah.
you hit you miss hard, right?
Yeah, you need a larger sample size. So if you do say something and 5 out of 1,000 find it funny,
Yeah.
you at least know you're not crazy and that it was somewhat funny instead of the 0 of 10.
Exactly. Yeah, I think the largest audience I had was just under 5,000.
Wow.
And people thought, "Are you nervous?" I said, "Not at all." I mean, not only did I speak, but I also sang. I was making a presentation trying to get a big group to bring their convention to our city. So I had a little song made up, and I belted it out, and
Unfazed.
yeah, I mean, yeah, and that didn't make me nervous. I was like, I always wanted to sing. I can't sing. To the point where audiences want to pay money to see, right? So
Yeah.
I got up there and sang that song, and I was like, I was blowing it out, like really getting into it,
Yeah.
And when people pick up on that vibe as well. But yeah, only way I'd be nervous is if I wasn't prepared or didn't know what I was speaking about. If I know my topic, I know what I'm going to talk about, I could talk for days without ever stopping or even missing a beat. And, I when I was doing it full time, I wouldn't leave my house for anything that was less than 45 minutes, meaning presentation time. I need at least 45. That's the bare minimum. I like an hour and a half if I'm going to go in and try to inspire a group or get people pumped up about something. But if it's like 45 minutes, 30 minutes, it's very hard because you can't hit your rhythm. You can't tee up your message in order to deliver it. So,
Yeah, that's I found that when I went on like Wish TV, I was talking about coney dogs, I was talking about ice cream, and so I was just crushing it, just like. But if you get me on something I don't know about, I'm just like, oh, you know what I mean? Like
beads of sweat.
Oh yeah, oh it's awful. But yeah, it's so true. Yeah, if you're just prepared, then you're just so relaxed because what is there to worry about other than maybe you flub a pronunciation here or there? You know? So when you're giving you start your own business, you're a keynote speaker. What are you pitching to people? Like, what are you like? Hey, hire me. I'm going to come talk about this.
Oh, I definitely had a wheelhouse, right? I'll talk to you about anything as long as I can Google it and learn it, right? Short of surgery or something like that, or something that's really intricate like that. But leadership, team building, conflict resolution, management styles, sales, marketing. I mean, I've done them all. Networking. It was amazing. I gave my first keynote address was in Hawaii. And they wanted me to talk about networking, something I'd never talked about before. So going into it, I was a nervous wreck because I had no idea. I knew what networking was. I knew I could probably, skip through it somehow. But the problem was it was about 300 people. Many of them some of them were my peers or people in my industry. I was still in the hotel business at the time, and I'm freaking out. I'm like, what am I going to do? So I stay up all night and I'm Google searching speakers, and this one speaker said something. He says, "Don't change your topic, change your audience." In other words, continue to do the same thing you've always done over and over again until it becomes second nature and you're an expert on that topic. And a light bulb went off my head because I had this one presentation about sales. And so I changed the title from setting yourself apart, a sales approach to success, to setting yourself apart, a networking approach to success.
And it works.
And it worked. And I went in there and I blew it away. It was my first standing ovation. I didn't know how to react because no one ever stood up.
You're like, I don't know what I would do. Be like, what are you guys doing?
Yeah, I know. I got paranoid and I didn't know what to do. And then finally somebody said, just be gracious and bow and say thank you. And I stood in line for the next 45 minutes, shaking hands and answering questions, which had never happened before either.
Wow, man.
So that was my first introduction to my foray into professional speaking.
Is there like, I don't know if this is the best term for this, but is there like a high from that of, because I know DJing or like there's different things where like working in a crowd, you get like this euphoric feeling, you get goosebumps. I have to imagine when you crush a good keynote speech that you're riding high for at least a day.
Yeah. Endorphins, oxytocin, I think are the two things that get pumped up in your system when you're there. And it happens for me after I introduced and people are applauding and I come out and I throw out a joke or something, and they're unintentional jokes too, by the way, because I don't have a bevy of comic remarks or retorts in my utility belt, right? So when I get nervous, I resort to humor. And I don't know where it comes from. I don't know how it comes from, but it happens. And once people start laughing at something you say, or they groan, and you're like, what? What? Kids aren't saying that these days anymore?
Oh, I'm sorry.
Yeah. I thought all the kids were saying that, right? and then people laugh even more, and then it just gives you more that rush. I'll give you a quick story. I was at Purdue doing a leadership conference, and they had hired me sight unseen because I said, this guy's really good. Hire this guy. And my friends, one of my college buddies' son and his roommate were at Purdue, and they took me out for drinks. We were out till 3 a.m., and I had to be up at 6. And I was the keynote address speaker, and they had all these other professional speakers that were doing breakout sessions sitting all in the front row. And I'm sweating. This one time I probably got a little nervous. So Rob was his name. And I said, I was going to have him sit in the middle of the stage with a pin light on him, just make him suffer for keeping me out so late the night before. And so I said, I came out and I said, good morning. Thank you for having me here today. And the people who hired me just spazzed, like, oh my God, this guy sucks.
Yeah, just coming out, yeah.
So I said, I'm sorry. Can I have a minute? And I turned around and I just shook it off, and I turned around and said, all right, ladies and gentlemen, once again, Mike Cheatham. And they all roar and they're like, and I said, I got to tell you something. I'm having a rough morning this morning. I apologize. My friend's kid took me out for drinks last night, and we're out kind of late. And as a matter of fact, Rob, where are you? And I said, Rob, where are you? And his girlfriend's in the back of the room says, he's not here. I said, what? He blew my whole opening. I was going to have him sit here and make a fool of him for keeping me out so late last night. And I said, oh my God, that's my whole opening. I had a whole open thing around that 5 minutes. And I said, oh, I'm so sorry. Give me a second. I need to collect myself because I'm stressing. I said, let me just say what happened last night. So they took me out to this bar, and it was called Charlie's, which is a famous bar at Purdue, chocolate factory. And everyone's cheering. I said, let me tell you something. I love going on a college campus because it just takes me back to the days. I said, the first bar we went into, I got touched, I got groped, and I got felt up in inappropriate places. And that was just the doorman. And the place roared, and at that point, I all my nerves went away. I forgot that I just my opening was gone.
Yeah.
And I built on that, and then the rest was history.
There you go. Was that the same one you were telling me about on Saturday where you had a IU slide come up?
Yeah.
It was like, boo! You're like, I just can't help. That's where I went to school.
Big picture of me, and it says IU above it, and they're all like, oh, what is that? I go, oh, I'm sorry. And I clicked the slide, and then the one came up with my picture with Purdue.
Oh, there you go. Oh, nice.
Yeah, I'm going to IU tomorrow.
You got to tease them a little bit. Yeah. You come out to the da-da-da-da.
I wish I'd have thought about that.
Yeah, I don't know if you want to troll them that hard. That might be too hard to come back from. Cool. Well, I'm going to take a quick break. When we come back, talk more food, bartending stuff, all that fun stuff.
All right.
Better business, better community. For over a century, the Greater Bloomington Chamber of Commerce has been a cornerstone of business growth and community development. They are dedicated to helping local businesses thrive. Their business is all about your business. Join the chamber today. Call 812-336-6381 or visit chamberbloomington.org to learn more. I hate to ever think of this as an interview, but it kind of is. I want it to be a conversation, but inherently there's some interview aspects. You used to interview people all the time. What is it that you would look for? What was the defining trait, if you will, that you're like, okay, this person's got it? Or what were some of your pet peeves on the other side of the spectrum?
Well, you know what? I would ask you a specific question and you wouldn't answer it. Would drive me insane.
Just like word vomit, they try to just say other fancy words, but never answer the question.
Like, say, Jordan, so give me an example, a specific example of when this may have occurred for you. Well, I can see where if this happened where blah, 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 and they would go on some tangent about what they perceive. I say, okay, fine. But has this ever happened to you? And if so, tell me how it happened and how you resolved it. And that they couldn't do it at that point, or they would still not answer the question, that'd drive me bonkers. So I agree that I would tell people a lot of times just to get them at ease that think of this as a conversation, not as an interview. We're just going to talk. We're going to talk. Don't see me. And sometimes if I like the person or I've met them before, I would take them. We'd go out and sit outside on a bench if it was a nice day.
I love that. Yeah.
Because that way you just relax. Because when you have the barrier between you, the desk, then I'm on the opposite side. I'm more the authoritative person. I'm the person they want to impress. You know, one of the techniques that I employed was when we went onto a college campus, for example, looking for entry-level people, we would have this opening night reception the day before the interviews. And if you were on the interview schedule, it was mandatory you were at that session. Because what we did is we spent an hour, we'd serve pizza or whatever, and then we just answer questions. We'd just say, okay, you know, we give you a little presentation about what Hyatt was all about, and here are the benefits, blah, blah, blah. So any other questions you have, you ask now. So tomorrow when we're in the interview, you don't have to feel a need to ask 3 questions that they'll always tell you. You can have at least 3 good questions to ask. You know what? No, ask them tonight. If at the end of the interview, you've not asked me one question, it's not going to make it or break it for you. Because tonight's the night you get to meet us. Tomorrow's when we get to know you. And then we try to make a connection.
I like that. You can find out so much more about somebody when they have their guard down. Mm-hmm. And the best interviews I've ever had I don't realize it till after it's done. I was like, oh, we were just hanging out. Yeah. Like you were getting to know. Yeah. Again, you're not drilling them. You're genuinely getting to know who they are. Because I've had people that have they crush the interview, and then you get them in there. You're like, oh, this person's awful. Like if I wanted to get to know this person and I missed it, but they were so good at just interviewing. But obviously, you know, the interviews you were doing were a little higher level than most of the ones that I do at the ice cream shop.
It depends on how you look at it, because for that person, that moment, it could be pretty high level for them. If you make a break. True. Yeah. Now I had this kid or a young man that I interviewed for a job, entry-level job. And for the first 20 minutes, it was during March Madness, I was quizzing him on college basketball and what he'd like, because he was interested, he knew about it. And I threw a couple scenarios at him that were I knew would, cause a rise. And even though I didn't believe it, I threw it at him just to see how he'd respond to it. And he came back and he said, oh, no, you're missing the point, blah, 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 blah. And then after about 20 minutes, I kind of wrapped it up and when can you start rolling? And he left. And when I called him to offer him the job, he goes, I already accepted another job because I didn't think I'd ever hear from you again, because all we talked about was college basketball. Yeah. I think his name was Matt. I said, Matt, what I was able to determine in that first 20 minutes was you were articulate, you could formulate an answer or response to things, and you came back at me with some facts that supported your position. Yeah, you could. I said, everything else I'm going to teach you, right? I wanted to know who you were as a person, how passionate you were, and he ended up taking the job after all. He turned the other one down and came back and took mine because he says, you sound like fun. Yeah. Yeah. I wasn't. No. Yeah.
Like joke was on him.
I'm fun in an interview, but once you get, I had people tell me that the person they met the night before at that opening reception, I was all fun and jocular, but I get in the interview, we have 30 minutes, basically 25 minutes for me to try to narrow down if you're the right candidate for this job and what hotel I could put you at and match you up with the perfect person to make a good match for the job. And people said, oh God, people would write reviews. So I started casting people write reviews. They go, it was the hardest interview I ever had. This guy was a jerk. and then these same people I'd offer jobs to because, they just thought that, God, you were so different. I go, but I only had 20 minutes to get to know you, right? Last night, you got to know me. I'm the fun guy.
And if you don't, I mean, there's so much wasted money in training people that aren't right for the job. So it's such an important thing. Yeah.
I told one girl, I said, hey, listen, I'm going to offer you a job right now. Before, and I didn't normally do this. I let them wait and we'd do some other things. But you're so good, I'm going to offer you a job right now. But what I want you to do is take the weekend, call your parents, talk about it, think about what we have to offer. And because I'm not convinced this is what you really want to do. And I said, don't take that wrong. I said, you got the job offer. I think you'd be great in it, but I'm not sure I heard from you this is what you want to do. So you go home, think about it, talk to your parents, and call me on Monday and let me know what you decide. And she turned the job down. Because had we not figured this out then, she'd have been in the job 3 months, 6 months, either failed or just hated it and then left.
Yeah, you would have sunk so much money into training. Yeah. And it would have just got zero return on your investment.
Exactly.
What, so to work yourself in the position you have, to be a keynote speaker, and make a career out of that, you have to be knowledgeable. You have to be really good at what you do. And then your position before that, being a national director in any sense of a large chain like that, you've been successful. What do you attribute that to? What has been the key to making that, to getting where you have been?
Well, if I look back, I always lack confidence, believe it or not. I mean, even to this day, I'm my harshest critic, and people say that all the time. But I never saw myself as being one of the sharp people in the room, right? And I always had to work harder, I felt, to get there, to get respect in these jobs. But I learned this very early on when I had a newspaper route when I was a kid. And I didn't formulate this at that point in time, but over the years, I've kind of come to realize this is the things that made me successful. And before I start any task, take on any new job, I ask myself 3 questions. The first one is, how is this task typically done? Second one is, how can I deviate from what is expected to achieve a greater result? And the final question is, what am I doing differently that sets me apart from everybody else? So if you look at those 3 questions, they're all basically the same questions, but they forced me to step out of my comfort zone and look at what I'm doing. So if the task is to walk in a clockwise position around a room, starting at 12 o'clock, ending at 12 o'clock, and that's the way everyone does it, right? Every now and then you have to stop and say, okay, how is this task typically done? This way, right? How can I deviate from what is expected to achieve a greater result? I'm going to go counterclockwise. And the third question, how can I set myself apart? Well, first of all, everyone's going to see me go in the opposite direction, right? So even though the result will pretty much be the same, it's going to take the same amount of time, I'm going to be looking out of my right eye as well as my left eye, and I might perceive something differently. But more importantly, people are going to perceive me as being differently because I dare to do it differently, right? So just because it ain't broke doesn't mean you have to fix it. And just because it's always been done this way doesn't mean you have to continue to do it this way. So what you have to determine is, hey, every now and then, we've been doing it this way for this long, just step back and look at it from a different perspective and find out if there's a better way of doing this. Doesn't mean you have to go in there and change it. Doesn't mean you have to go in there and implement it, but ask yourself so you know that what you're doing is the right way, or there might be a better way, or bring in a different person to look at it and give your feedback so you can look at it and say, hey, let's try this a different way and see what happens.
So back to the specific example, can you give an example of when that, methodology, you looked at something within Hyatt or, within the processes of your career and you're just like, oh, how about we do it this way? Or maybe just with how you approach keynote speaking.
Well, let me give you an example. It's not my own, but let me give you an example. There was and I experienced this firsthand. I'd heard about it and I actually hopped into a cab where this happened to me. It's in New York City. And when you pull up, if the driver had the opportunity, he would get out of his seat, run around, open the door for you. He had a tie on or a vest. He was neatly dressed and groomed, shaved.
Works.
Yeah. And he would get back in. He says, good morning. My name is Bob. I'm your driver. Where do you want to go today? I want to go here. He goes, okay, at this time of day, with this traffic, it'll take us about 18 minutes to get there. Now, I do have a copy of the USA Today, the Wall Street Journal, and the New York Times here, if you'd like a copy. I've also tuned my radio to all the local radio stations, news, pop, country, whatever, if you like that, or I can just turn it off. The only thing he didn't offer me was a cup of coffee. If he had offered me a cup of coffee, I'd have been blown away. I'd have driven around, hey, go around one more time, right?
Yeah. Take the long way.
But what he's done is he set himself apart from every other stinking or non-stinking taxi driver in New York, right? And you know what happened when I got out of the cab? I tipped him. I tipped him huge, right? I did put it on my expense report, but hey, I gave him a huge tip.
But it's still generosity. Generosity.
So he single-handedly was probably at the time reportedly making over 6 figures a year driving a taxi cab. And why? Because he did it differently than every other taxi driver that you ever would have encountered in your life anywhere.
Yeah.
Right. So if you apply that mentality or methodology to what you do, I think you'll find a higher level of success.
Yeah. And maybe if you're not even necessarily trying to differentiate yourself, it'll happen organically.
Yeah. Now, you asked me a specific example about me. I was in sales, right? My job was all about selling clients to come and utilize our services. Well, when this job came up as the Director of Sales Recruitment, the senior vice president was brand new in his job. He had asked all his vice presidents, give me a name of somebody I should interview. Well, I had already talked to most of these people because I knew most of them. And I said, God, I'd really like to have this job. But I'd only been in my job in Albuquerque for 1 year. So the odds of me getting this job were slim and none. But it was important that I got my name out there. And so they flew me up for the interview. And there was one other woman who was a senior HR professional who was up for the job. And it was an HR kind of position in the sales discipline. No other discipline had their own recruiter, just sales. And she was pretty much, it was her job. And when I got done interviewing, I sent a follow-up letter. This is just the very beginning days of email. I'm sorry I even brought that part up. But so I wrote a letter and I said, hey, you know what? Thank you for the opportunity to interview with you. Here's what I'm really interested in this job, and here's why. And then here's if I have any weaknesses or any areas I need to develop, here's what it is. It's in the HR side. I don't know HR, but I know sales. And who better to recruit a salesperson than a salesperson? I can learn the HR. Can you teach an HR person what they need to know to find effective salespeople? And then finally I said, and if given the opportunity, here's my 30, my 60, and 90-day plan once I land in that job. And the vice president, who I'd be reporting to directly, said, that's the reason why you got the job. Because I knew for at least 90 days, I'd have to deal with you.
After that, we'll check in.
Yeah.
See how it's going.
You had a plan that seemed to fit everything we talked about. And that's how I set myself apart. I got the job. And fortunately her name was Wendy. She didn't get this director job. They gave her a vice president job.
Oh, worked out for everybody.
So I keep telling her, you owe me something.
Where's my commission?
Yeah, something.
Please take me out to a steak dinner.
Yeah, right.
That would, when you're talking about training an HR person to do sales or sales to do HR, just makes me think of Armageddon, where they're just like, why not train astronauts to drill instead of drill?
Wow.
To, be astronauts.
I'm about to commit that one to memory because that'd be a good example to use in. If and when I speak again.
Yeah. Do you have any plans on ever doing any?
You know what? I got devastated. I got rocked during the pandemic. I was supposed to open the bar in April 2020, and I was still doing my speaking things, but then that hit, and over the course of 2 weeks, I lost all my business I had booked for the rest of 2020 and 2021 in over a 2-week period.
Wow.
So I said, do I want to go back and rebuild this business again? Because I had done it twice before from scratch after 9/11 and when the economy bubble burst.
2008, yeah.
Yep. So I had to rebuild, and I said, God, I'm getting tired of doing this. I had done it enough times, but I didn't have a product. I had a service. And when things got tough, economies got soft, I was one of the first people they cut because this was, training. Do I need to spend money on training? Do I need to spend money on equipment?
Right.
So I said, when I come back, I want to, before I do the speaking thing again, I want to have something that's product based, and the bars filled that gap. So I have something, my items have value tomorrow. As a speaker and a trainer, if I don't sell it today, it's gone, right? I have to sell it tomorrow. A beer in a bottle, if I don't sell it today, I still own that inventory tomorrow. I can sell it tomorrow. I'll still get my money back. But every day it's like on an airline seats. If they don't sell that seat today, they can't make that money on that seat today, tomorrow. Yeah. It's
gone. Yeah.
It's gone.
Huh. Yeah. That's, seems like you've learned the hard way, and now you're just like, okay, I'm going this route. This is much more, much safer.
Yeah. But to answer your question, I still have a couple clients that I work with because they were really strong contacts. So as a matter of fact, I spoke to a group of young kids down at City Hall not long ago.
Oh, nice.
Yeah. High school kids. That was the roughest audience I've ever had.
About how many?
It was about 35.
Yeah.
But it wasn't because the number, it was the fact that they were all high school students.
Right.
And I'd never talked to high school students before. So my jokes were landing flat.
I went and talked to, it was at least 100, 150 middle schoolers and over at Jackson Creek. And it was nerve wracking. I was good. Like I didn't let my voice shake or anything like that. Once I was going, I was good. But there's something about John Mulaney, the stand-up comedian, has a bit about how like eighth graders are the most intimidating because they'll find the thing that you're insecure about and then like hit that. He's just like, look at that guy with the womanly hips, and he's just like, that's the thing I'm sensitive about. And so I was just waiting to get heckled, and I remember I was talking about because one of the questions they had filled out ahead of time was, where do you like to go out to eat? And I talked about Michael's Uptown Cafe. I was like, yeah, Michael's, like, they're great. They're one of the OGs. And the fact that I use the term OG, some of the kids are laughing. I'm like, hey, we had that before you ever did.
Yeah.
Like, don't act like I'm trying to act cool and hip.
No.
We've been using the term OG for a long time.
Well, see, I use the same banter when I'm with college kids. I say, you know what, it has really good swag, and they're like, what? Kids don't say that anymore?
Yeah. Like, yeah. You guys should try this cocktail. It's gas.
Yeah.
Like, no, literally, it's gasoline. It's moonshine.
The whole self-deprecating humor thing works famously well for me.
Okay.
I love to just make fun of myself, and then people will laugh. I don't know what it is, but Mulvaney, God, he's hilarious. He's a genius.
Oh, insane. He's so good. Well, and he his newest special just hit close to home for me on a few levels where I'm just like, and just the way he's a storyteller. It's not even really telling jokes.
Yeah.
He's just telling stories, and there's just inherently funny things in his delivery. He's so good at bringing those out.
Yeah.
Season 5 of the No Dishes podcast is brought to you by visitbloomington.com. VisitBloomington.com is the best resource for restaurant and culinary information, special events, fun activities, places to stay, and more in our area. We share a similar mission here on the No Dishes podcast of highlighting local businesses and the people who make our community unique. We can't thank them enough for hopping on board. Check them out at visitbloomington.com to easily plan your next meal, visit, or night out on the town. So you talked about, speaking of Michael's, you talked about Malibu, you talked about Trojo. What are some of the other places you like to go? What are some of your go-to orders at those places?
Well, Big Woods. It's the first restaurant I went to when I first came into town. Love Big Woods.
Is this 2020, 2019?
I came over in 2019.
Yeah.
Yep. And went in there with my buddy, and we sat down there, and I said, oh my God, what a cool concept. And then I ate the food, and I was like blown away. But, you got to segment it into styles, but like, tell you, Dagwood's over on Kirkwood, Indiana.
Yeah.
It is the best Italian sub I've eaten anywhere, right? So far.
And you traveled.
And I traveled, yeah. And it's so good because what it is about that sandwich is you have all the different meats, but like they are spread out evenly. So in every bite, you get an equal distribution of the meats in your mouth.
That's what it's about on anything.
It's hard to describe that, right?
No, but that's exactly what you want. And the bread at Dagwood's is so good. And I was every time I get the Dagwood Supreme and just their special sauce, Dagwood sauce, whatever you call it. I don't know. It's just it's perfect. It just it tickles the taste buds.
I just had Dagwood special sauce not long ago because they said I think I had a Reuben or something. I said, "Do you want it?" Or it was just corned beef. It wasn't. And I, I'll try it.
Sure,
right?
throw
it on there. And I said on the side, so, and I slathering it on there after that because it was so darn good. It was so darn good.
What do you like to get at Trojo?
Come on, man.
Double cheeseburger?
No.
Euro?
You don't go to the Trojan Horse and get a burger.
Have you had them? All right.
They are good.
Okay.
I have had a burger at the Trojan
I know, yeah.
But my go-to is the Euro.
Okay. I figured that was the come on. That's kind of what they do.
I mean, it's a Trojan Horse.
But they're becoming more and more famous for their cheeseburgers.
I know.
Because they're grinding that meat daily.
Yeah.
I talked to the Shelleys who bought it from, why am I blanking on his name? Either way, and hopefully they'll come on at some point. We want to, because they do a baklava ice cream, and we need to get some of that. In the shop. Not that's a little inside scoop. Pun intended.
Our time is up here.
Yeah, Jordan, thanks for having me. I'm out of here. What are some of the cocktails at Sleepers? Because you had a very extensive cocktail list, and I know my buddy's got this like smoked old fashioned. You had another one that was like the Blue Ridge, based off the neighborhood that was near. Yeah. So you're playing to the local Northside crowd. What are some of the other examples of that cocktail list?
Just not the Northside crowd. The Blue Ridge Rita it's just our take on a blue margarita, and we twisted it just enough to make it different and to cater to our Blue Ridge neighbors. And then we've got the Sleepers Caribbean Knucklehead.
Oh,
Now, we had these guys that came in, and they're boisterous, they're loud. They come in for the IU games, and they're fun. They're a blast. And there's 4 or 5 of them that come in, and they said, "Hey, we want to know if you can make this drink we got when we were down in the Caribbean." I said, "Well, what is it?" So I took all the different ingredients, and I mix it up for them. And because I kept calling them knuckleheads every time they came in. So I shook it up, made it, poured it out, and they said, "This is the best. You hit it spot on."
Nailed it.
And they said, "The only difference is we pay $35 a glass for it down in the Caribbeans." I said, "I don't think I can do that here." So
try.
that's one that we created. But our first signature drink that we made, I have a bartender. His name is Johnny. I got to tell you, all the people I hired in my career, he has got to be one of the best people I've ever hired.
wow.
Yeah, and all the rest of these people, stay away. All right,
Don't come poaching Johnny.
Don't be trying to get Johnny because. But we were. I trained him at the front desk, and then so we knew each other. And then when I'm sitting in the hotel in quarantine, before they start lifting a little bit, he'd come over and we'd sit out in the courtyard and have a couple cocktails, right? And I was working with this drink that I didn't know. I was just trying to throw some stuff together, and between the two of us, we kind of like tweaked it, and it's their number one drink. It was for a long time the number one drink we had on the menu, and it's we didn't have a name for it. And this girl came in, Tori, on her 21st birthday, and we were like, we wanted to name it something about do a summer, but now it's fall and people are still drinking it. And she goes, "Called Endless Summer."
Oh,
so yeah, so it's
shout out to Tori on the 21st birthday.
21st birthday,
yeah.
Yep. And then you mentioned the smoked cherry old fashioned. That's something we kind of modified from an old fashioned, and we had some cherry smoke to it, and it's in bourbon and some cherry liqueur and cherry bitters, and it's wow.
Yeah,
it's amazing.
My buddy said it was great.
Yeah,
and they had. You had the little cherry wood chips. You got the little torch. You're smoking
it's smoked right there on the pot.
Oh yeah, the real deal.
Yeah.
If you had someone came into Sleepers first time, they're getting one food item, one drink. Obviously, everyone's different.
Mm-hmm.
But if it was you coming in there for your first time,
you know what? Being I don't do air quotes, but just imagine I'm doing air quotes right now. Being winter, the chili is homemade, and we get a lot of raves or reviews on that one. And a smoked cherry old fashioned, that would be a really good combination.
That sounds like a great pairing. I mean, you think of chili, you think of smoky, you think of that kind
warmth,
of flavor,
comfort,
that flavor profile.
Yeah.
So had you had bartending experience before this? I mean, where did you sneak it in? I was like, did I miss that?
Well, you know what? When in the hotel business, there were times when we would do events and they needed bartenders, and we would help out, right? And that was the big extent of my bartending experience. Yeah. But then when I decided to open this bar, I went to bartending school. I said, because I'm going to hire people to run this bar, I better know what they're doing and how to do it.
Oh, absolutely.
Well, one of the best teachers I had when I was at my first hotel job, the GM could do any job in the hotel, not masterfully well. He could do laundry. He could tend bar. He could check people at the desk. He wasn't really great and efficient at it, but he could jump in where he was needed. And that's why I said, I need to know what they're doing so I can correct them if necessary or train them. And
or just fill in. If the biggest roadblock to success as a business manager or owner is just staffing. And people get sick or people get in car accidents or things happen. Yeah. And you've got to be able to do it. Otherwise you're just like, oh, we're closing, you know?
And I thought about paying to send Johnny to bartending school. But I'm a trainer, damn it.
Same thing with the speeches. You're like, why would I pay someone else? I could just do this myself.
I trained him, and is he the best bartender? He's up there. I mean, because he's so smart, and he learns something, and he's one of those people that he'll look it up, he'll figure it out, and he challenges me sometimes, which kind of pisses me off. But no,
that's good. You got to put but there's something to be said for that.
Yeah, but he's aggressive, and everything has to be the best for him. And he has if you want to try nice, if you're into it, Johnny's pineapple marg. Yep, tell him I sent you. And that's a really good drink. Fresh pineapple, We also do a drink where we grill a pineapple and put it in the drink as well.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Yeah.
Huh. Yeah, I didn't see that one when I was perusing.
Yeah. Well, there's like 18 specialty drinks that they're all. They may be like the Manhattan and the old fashions are on there, but we also have some on there that we've tweaked a little bit, so they make them a little bit special, so that people come in and say, I want an old fashioned. Hey, how about you try this one?
Our variation, exactly.
Yep.
And that's what differentiates you from.
Yeah.
It's all come full circle. I love the disclaimer you had on there about it takes time to make. So like these are signature cocktails. They take time. Be patient. It'll be well worth it.
Wow. You did read that menu, didn't you?
Dude, I'm a restaurant nerd. I'm telling you, I've just been in restaurants forever, and I like to look at the menu and find typos on people's menus.
Did you find any?
No.
Okay,
Although
good.
I didn't. I wasn't. Yeah, I was. You were such a captivating conversation.
Wow.
I could only look at it so much.
Yeah.
All right. Last thing before we go, you've traveled around a lot. You've lived a lot of different places. What is your favorite dish you've ever had?
Ooh, mud crab. Mud crab. It was in Doyle's Fish Market, I think is the name of it, in Sydney, Australia. And I had never seen or heard of a mud crab before. And let me tell you something. That was a mouthful of deliciousness. It was unbelievable.
Is it just crab meat?
It's this big mud crab.
And you're breaking it open?
Yeah, and you break it open. Oh, God. It was unbelievable.
Huh.
Unfreaking believable.
Just like, and it miles ahead of just a king crab or?
Yeah. I mean, lobsters and crabs in that part of the country were just like, just bottom dwellers.
Yeah.
And until somebody came along and said, hey, this is good stuff.
Yeah.
And mud crab had to be one of the things, man. I have to tell you.
Well, it doesn't sound like something you normally don't want to hear mud.
But yeah. But I tell you what, it was so delightful. It was so light and flaky and sweet and drawn butter. Yeah.
That was my next question. I was like, are you dipping it in butter too?
Yeah.
I've always been a big crab legs.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, cool, man. Hey, thank you so much. I'm so glad we just happened to go in there on a whim. You were such a captivating conversation then. Your story is incredible. You've done so much. And the fact that I feel like Bloomington's just lucky to have you here now.
Wow.
So just thanks for taking the time and coming to share everything you've learned with us.
Well, thank you so much. I really appreciate it.
Yeah. Thanks,
and you're great at what you do too. And make this easy.
Thanks, man. I appreciate it. What another great episode. Thanks so much for tuning in. Also, thanks to our Season 6 presenting sponsor, Visit Bloomington. Check them out at visitbloomington.com. We'll see you soon. In the meantime, keep those hands dry. This episode of the No Dishes Podcast was recorded, edited, and produced by Garrett Portinga of Green Hat Media in beautiful downtown Bloomington, Indiana.
No dishes.
No Dishes Media.
No Dishes Media.